They told me I wasn't family enough to sit at their table. 6 years later, I came back, not to ask for a seat, but to flip the table over. My name is Leona Merrick. I'm the niece they pushed out of the Merrick family business, the outlier they publicly dismissed in front of shareholders, board members, and press. Back then, I had 2 degrees, a cheap suit, and the foolish belief that merit could outshine bloodlines. I was wrong. But today, I walked into that same glass tower on the San Diego waterfront, wearing a navy blue suit that cost more than my first car, and carrying a tablet full of numbers that would rattle the empire they built on ego and inheritance. They didn't recognize me at first. To them, I was just the new executive from Covex Global, the firm that had become their largest client, the one pumping over $70 million through their logistics division every year. They didn't know I owned it. They didn't know I'd been planning this moment since the day they shut me out. But they were about to find out, because I wasn't here to beg, to plead, or to win anyone's approval. I was here to make decisions. And the first one? Whether or not to keep their family name alive another fiscal quarter. This isn't revenge. This is business, the very thing they claimed I'd never understand. 6 years ago, the conference room looked the same. Sleek mahogany table, floor-to-ceiling windows, the California coast stretching out like some kind of promise I wasn't allowed to touch. I was 24, freshly graduated, wearing a second-hand blazer and heels that pinched my toes. I had come prepared, with a business plan, projections, a proposal to streamline Merit Group's aging logistics chain using predictive AI models I'd built during my final year in grad school. I believed in it. I believed in me. The boardroom didn't. Grayson, my cousin, smirked as he leaned back in his leather chair. "Leona, you're smart, sure," he said. "But this company isn't just about ideas. It's about legacy, blood. You don't just walk in with a spreadsheet and change that." The others chuckled. My aunt, Claudine Merrick, chairwoman of the board and gatekeeper of everything worthy, didn't even look at my proposal. She simply folded her hands and said, "We appreciate your enthusiasm, but you're not quite Merrick material. Perhaps a role more administrative would suit you better." The word administrative landed like a slap. I nodded, pretending I didn't care, gathering my papers with trembling fingers. My cheeks burned, but I kept my voice calm when I thanked them for their time. As I walked out of the building, their laughter echoed behind me like a closing door. That was the day I understood. If you're not born into the table, they'll never let you sit at it. So I decided to build my own. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't send long emails demanding justice or fairness. I went home, poured myself a glass of stale boxed wine, opened my laptop, and started a spreadsheet titled Things They Were Wrong About. The first row had one name, me. That same night, I bought a domain. covexglobal.com. No funding, no investors, just a blank page and the sting of rejection burning in my chest like a pilot light. I didn't know exactly what I was building yet. I just knew it had to be big enough, loud enough, strategic enough that one day they'd have no choice but to notice. And then fear would follow. I took on freelance contracts, small, messy operations no one else wanted to touch. I offered efficiency consulting, systems streamlining, inventory reconciliation. I worked alone, sometimes with borrowed Wi-Fi from a diner that gave me coffee refills for free, because I tipped well. By month 5, I had 1 client who actually paid on time. By month 7, I had 4. The work was grueling, unglamorous, but I was learning their language. While Grayson was busy posting vacation pictures from Dubai, and Claudine was giving interviews about legacy leadership, I was teaching myself freight modeling and customs automation from PDFs I downloaded at 2 a.m. 18 months in, I brought in my first full-time hire. Trevor, a disillusioned logistics analyst from a bankrupt distributor. He had experience. I had vision. Together, we built the first proprietary routing software Covex would offer. Then came Rowan, a data scientist with a quiet mind and deadly accuracy. She didn't ask who I was, only what I wanted to build. We moved into a tiny office above a laundromat, our desks shoved between boxes of Ethernet cables and energy drinks. But our output? Flawless. We delivered ahead of schedule, under budget. We didn't promise miracles. We made clients more money, period. The real shift happened in year 2. One of our smaller freight partners, struggling to maintain contracts with Merit Group, approached me with an opportunity. They were bleeding clients, but they still had something valuable: access, warehouse layouts, logistics maps, routing dependencies, vendor contracts. I studied them for weeks. I realized something terrifying. Merit Group's infrastructure was ancient, bloated, outdated by at least a decade. I saw the hole, and I built the shovel. We began acquiring controlling shares in back-end service firms linked to Merit's supply chain. Not enough to trigger alarms, just enough to influence pricing, reroute efficiency, and offer improvements through Covex's white-label systems. One by one, Merit's entire logistics arm began relying on technology and partnerships we controlled. I didn't need to walk into their boardroom. I was already inside their bloodstream. By the end of year 3, over $30 million flowed through contracts tied to Covex. They thought we were just another firm with good performance numbers. They didn't realize their freight optimization team was using our software. Their inventory metrics, processed through our servers. Their procurement cycle, rebuilt using models we developed under a shell affiliate called Argus Nexus. They never asked who Argus was. They never cared where the tools came from. And that was their first mistake. In year 4, we launched our own audit quietly. Not on them, but on ourselves. We mapped out every entry point, every department inside Merit Group that touched our systems. The results? Devastating. They were more reliant on Covex than they were on their own in-house divisions. 68% of their quarterly growth came from sectors tied to our models. 72% of their logistics revenue came from accounts we originated. Still, they didn't know it was me. Because in their minds, I was gone. Erased. The niece who wasn't cut out for leadership. The girl who didn't belong at the table. I didn't correct them. I let them live in the illusion. But I kept building. Quietly. Relentlessly. By year 5, I'd embedded 2 analysts inside Merit's finance division under third-party contracts. Their only job was to monitor Grayson's work, flagging irregularities, tracing suspicious credits, tracking cash flow manipulation. What they uncovered confirmed what I suspected. He wasn't just coasting on his last name. He was falsifying numbers, hiding losses, redirecting liability to temporary accounts that disappeared each quarter like sleight of hand. It was corporate fraud. I didn't move right away, because strategy isn't about exposure. It's about timing. I knew one thing. When I came back, I wasn't going to ask for an apology. I was going to walk in with the power to decide whether they lived or folded. So I waited. And while I waited, I expanded. By the end of year 6, Covex Global operated in 12 countries. We serviced 9 Fortune 500 firms. Our revenue was nearly triple that of Merit Group. And behind all that success, layered beneath Shellcore, rebranded holding entities, and offshore license fronts, was me, Leona Merrick, the woman they said didn't belong in the family business, the woman now holding the knife over its throat. I arrived 12 minutes early, not because I needed to. Covex had already won the leverage war, but because I wanted to feel the weight of that building again. The same elevator, the same marble floors, the same receptionist, though her smile faltered when she saw my name on the guest list. The Merit Group quarterly board meeting was being held on the top floor. Glass walls, leather chairs, catered espresso. I'd sat in the back of that room once, ignored and dismissed. Today, I would sit at the front and control the outcome. Grayson didn't look up when I entered. He was too busy flipping through slides, projecting a strong Q1 thanks to their most reliable client. Covex Global, of course. The irony was almost poetic. Claudine sat at the head of the table in her signature gray suit, pearls in place, chin held high. Time had made her sharper, not softer. "Excellent work, Grayson," she said with a rehearsed smile. "It's proof that keeping leadership in the bloodline was the right choice." Bloodline. The same word she used 6 years ago to cut me out. I let the comment float in the air. Let them enjoy their moment, until Mila, Claudine's assistant, approached. "Miss Merrick," she said softly. "They're ready for your segment." I stood, smoothing my suit. Custom, midnight navy, precision-tailored, everything they said I could never wear properly. I walked slowly toward the front, tablet in hand, posture still, calm. Grayson's voice cut the air. "Excuse me. What is she doing here? This meeting is closed." I met his eyes. "I'm here on behalf of Kovex Global. We need to discuss contract revisions ahead of Q3. Silence hit like a dropped pin. Claudine's brows drew together. "That's not how this works. Kovex always sends someone from the external vendor group." I smiled. "They do. You're looking at her." Grayson paled. Elise, my other cousin, actually dropped her stylus. "That's not possible," Claudine said flatly. "We did a full vetting on Kovex. You run a startup, or did." I tapped my tablet, casting the first slide onto the screen. Kovex Global, formerly operating as Omnicell Ventures, previously Vega X Consulting, is mine. I've been running it for 6 years. Gasps followed. Real, raw gasps. Then the numbers came. Triple their annual revenue. Operations in 12 countries. 9 Fortune 500 clients. More than 70% of Merrick's logistics capacity tied directly to Kovex contracts. I watched them process it. Not one of them blinked. "I believe," I said, voice steady, "that qualifies me for a seat at this table." Grayson stood, voice shaking. "You tricked us." I raised an eyebrow. "Tricked? No. I conducted business, quietly, effectively, exactly how you taught me." Claudine narrowed her eyes. "Why now?" "Because your dependency on Kovex has reached a level I can no longer ignore. And because I've seen enough of your internal numbers to know you've been lying to your board." I clicked to the next slide. Audit anomalies, deferred revenue schemes, phantom asset allocations. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm calling a full audit session. My analysts will present our findings. I suggest you attend." Grayson tried again. "You're doing this out of spite." I paused at the door, turning slowly. "No, cousin," I said quietly. "This isn't spite. This is a fiscal reckoning. One you triggered when you chose ego over competence." Then I stepped out, leaving their silence behind me. Rowan was waiting by the elevator. He handed me a bottle of water. "How did it go?" he asked. I glanced at my watch. Exactly as planned. The next morning, I arrived before sunrise. The Merrick Group building looked different in the dawn light. Harsher, exposed. No bustling executives, no polished show. Just cold steel and glass waiting to be cracked open. The lobby guard did a double take. Same man from 6 years ago. He stood up too quickly, knocking over his coffee. "Miss Merrick, welcome back." "Early," I murmured. "Board's already gathering upstairs." Funny what the scent of collapse does to people. When I stepped into the executive elevator, my reflection stared back at me. Calm, composed, precise. This was the woman they tried to erase. The one they said would never understand business. And today, I held the pen over their future. The boardroom was already full. Claudine sat at the head, but something about her posture was different, stiffer. Grayson looked like he hadn't slept. Corporate lawyers flanked him, whispering too fast and too loud. Around the table, independent directors flipped through the summary packets my team had delivered that morning. Behind me, Rowan entered with our analysts. 4 professionals in dark suits, every one of them hand-picked, embedded into Merrick's systems over the last 5 years. They'd collected everything, every cooked book, every shady vendor deal, every asset that existed only in a spreadsheet. "Good morning," I said as I took my place at the head of the presentation table. "Shall we begin?" Claudine's voice was brittle. "Leona, before we get into this, perhaps a private conversation?" I tilted my head slightly. "I think we've had enough of those, don't you?" She didn't reply. "Distribute the full reports, please." Pages rustled like thunder. A wave of whispers, gasps, and muted curses rolled through the room as the reality sank in. "This can't be right," one director muttered, flipping faster through the spreadsheets. "These numbers, these losses, they're accurate," I said, tapping my screen. and they've been buried under miscellaneous operational expenses for 2 consecutive fiscal years. I turned to Grayson. Would you like to explain how over $8 million in fabricated profits were built on vendor layering and false receivables? His lawyer opened his mouth to object. Or, I continued, raising a hand, should we skip ahead to the part where client acquisition metrics were inflated using ghost partnerships with companies that don't exist? Silence. Real, thick corporate silence. One of the older board members leaned forward. Miss Merrick, based on this data, without Kovacs contracts, Merrick Group is insolvent, I finished for him. And you've been operating under that technicality for at least 3 quarters. Grayson looked like he might throw up. You're trying to destroy us. I kept my eyes on him. No, Grayson, you did that. I'm just showing everyone the wreckage. This is our family, he hissed. How could you do this to us? I let the silence hang before answering. You mean the family that told half the industry I wasn't competent enough for leadership, or the one that publicly laughed when I proposed an innovation strategy? Claudine sat straighter. That was 6 years ago. Yes, I said softly. And in those 6 years, I built a company 3 times your size. I clicked to the next slide. Dependency metrics. A bright red bar graph displayed just how deeply Merrick relied on Kovacs Global for revenue stability, distribution control, and infrastructure efficiency. 47% of your revenue is tied directly to Kovacs, I said. That revenue will disappear by Monday if I terminate all contracts. The boardroom erupted. Directors turned to one another, shouting over options, liabilities, emergency votes. Legal advisors huddled like a crumbling wall. Claudine tried to regain control, slamming her hand on the table. You wouldn't dare. I already did, I replied. Termination letters are drafted and pending. But I'd prefer not to press send if we can come to terms. What terms? She asked, voice tight. I slid a sealed envelope across the table. 2 options. Inside, a printed offer. Option 1, Grayson resigns. An independent board is appointed. Merrick Group undergoes full corporate restructuring with financial oversight by a third party. Kovacs continues limited partnership on a controlled scale. And the other? I walk. Kovacs pulls out entirely. Our audit findings are forwarded to federal regulators and the SEC. You lose not just your revenue, but your licenses. You'd ruin us. No, I said coolly. You already did that. I'm just choosing how loud the fall will be. Grayson's voice cracked. This isn't business, it's revenge. I leaned forward, my voice barely above a whisper. No, cousin. This is the business you told me I'd never understand. Cold, measured, unforgiving. The business you said was only for those with the right pedigree. I stood, taking my tablet and notes. You have 1 hour. And then I walked out. Let them stew in their empire's unraveling. Let them realize the one they dismissed had just become their only shot at survival. I didn't wait for their answer. I returned to the suite upstairs, once reserved for Claudine, now prepared for its new occupant. The skyline stretched wide beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass, the Pacific glowing with that golden edge you only see in late afternoon. Rowan was already there, a bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket. Think they'll take the deal? He asked. They already have, I said, glancing at my phone. The notifications rolled in like waves. Grayson's resignation, formalized. Claudine's early retirement, announced. The board's vote, passed. Barely, but passed. By sunset, it was official. The empire that once laughed at my ambition now reported to me. I poured a glass and walked to the desk, my desk now. I reached into my bag and pulled out an old printout. Worn edges, faded ink, but the words still clear. It was the rejection email, the one Claudine had sent me 6 years earlier. Leona, while we respect your enthusiasm, your leadership instincts are not aligned with the expectations at Merrick Group. We believe a support role may be more appropriate at this stage in your development. I smiled. Then I folded it once and slid it into the drawer, next to a new letter. My appointment as executive chair of the board. The calls started soon after. My mother, my father, 2 cousins, then Grayson himself. Messages laced with panic, guilt, excuses. How could you do this to your aunt? You didn't have to humiliate them. We're family, Leona. Family! Where was that word when I stood in that boardroom with shaking hands and unacknowledged ideas? Where was it when I walked out to laughter? I didn't answer any of them. I only typed one message in the family group chat. Don't worry about the family name. Merrick Group is finally in qualified hands. Then I turned off my phone and watched the city. Not for revenge, not for power, for peace. A peace I had earned not through aggression, not through screaming or proving myself to people who never listened, but by building something so undeniable they were forced to take notice. I didn't need them to believe in me anymore. I became the kind of woman they had to believe in, because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the one they now answer to. Claudine had been right about one thing, though. Back then, I wasn't qualified to work at Merrick Group. I was qualified to own it